He goes on and he says, incline your ear and come to me. Listen that you may live. And I will make an everlasting covenant with you according to the faithful mercy shown to David. What is he saying? He's saying this. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, all you who have committed idolatry after idolatry, committed heresy after heresy, lie after lie, immorality after immorality, come to me. And they cry out, but how can we come to thee? They know about God's holiness. They know about justice. They know that the wages of sin is death. How will we come to thee? Through the sure mercies of David you will come to me. Through the one that was greater than David you will come to me. Through the work that I have done for you. Not through personal reformation. Not through getting all your ducks in line. Not through ordering your life. Not through offering some work of piety. No, you will come based on what I have done through David, my son. Through the cross of Calvary. God gets so much glory when He is believed with regard to the cross. I want us to notice two things here. First of all, He says, come to me those who are thirsty, those who are hungry, those who have nothing. Now, I want you to realize something that's gone on here. There has been much plowing that has gone on in the book of Isaiah. Much plowing by the prophet. He has spoken hard words to the people of God, and he has plowed them and broken them up and plowed them some more. And God, working through His prophet, working through His own acts of providence, what has God done? God has broken this people in two so that they recognize something that the people of our day do not recognize, that they are blind and miserable and impoverished. One old preacher, as a matter of fact, I've heard a lot of old preachers say this, it's not hard to get a man saved at all. It's hard to get him lost. Listen to me. Many times, I don't like preaching much in the United States because they usually just give you a week. You can't do anything in a week. The old preachers, the ones I used to know when I was a boy, they would come into a town to plow. They would plow for 2 or 3 weeks. All they would do would be preach on sin, offer nothing of mercy to anyone, and walk home every night without giving an invitation. They would plow, and they would plow, and they would plow until the people began to realize they were exactly as Scripture said they were. Miserable and wretched and thirsty and hungry and starving and dying, and most of all, justly condemned. You preach and you plow with the people until the very sinners sitting in the pew raise their hands and say, God would be just in killing me and destroying my soul in hell this very moment. I asked an old preacher one time, this was, oh my goodness, 25 years ago. I was just called into ministry, and I went to this place where they would give 50% off the suits for preacher boys. It was in Paducah, Kentucky, and it was one of those almost, can this really be happening experiences. So I go into this old store, and I'm looking around, and all of a sudden the door opens, one of those doors with a bell on it, and it kind of opened up and ringed and closed. And I turned around and looked, and there's this old man standing there, and he's just looking at me. And I didn't know what to do. And so I kind of walked towards him. I said, hello, sir. He goes, hello, boy. He said, you've been called to preach? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, then let me tell you about preaching. And he pointed out the door, and he said, you see that place where that building's at right there, young man? And I said, yes, sir. Because I used to set up a tent there in the 50s and preach. And he said, boy, I'd preach for 2 weeks. On sin. On sin, boy, I would preach. And I'd leave them without an invitation. I'd leave them without hope. And I'd go home and I'd go to bed. And I said, well, sir, how long would that continue? He said, until the Spirit of God fell down on the place. And I said, well, how did you know when that happened? And he said, well, about 2 weeks into the meeting, someone handed me, I think it was $25 or $50, he said, and told me to go buy a suit. And I walked into this store. That store had been there for about 80 years. He said, I walked into the store, and when I walked through the door, there was a young man who was a clerk. When he turned around and saw me, he fell down on his face and cried out, oh God, have mercy on me, I'm a sinner. And I knew the Spirit of God had fallen down on the place. Do we really believe that anymore? You know what we're raising up? A bunch of little boys with a lot of correct theology. But where's the power of God? The power of God. Do we believe it enough? Young men, those of you who may be called to preach, do you believe it enough to wrestle in the woods? You may have the theology of David Brainerd, but do you have scarred knees like David Brainerd? You see, people must know, first of all, that they are thirsty. They must know that they are lost to appreciate this invitation. I often use an illustration of pulling out some keys and jingling them before the congregation and asking them, does this make you happy, the sound of the keys? And most of them say, why no? And I say, of course not. But if you were locked away in a dungeon, the sound of keys would fill your heart with joy. And that's why so many sinners have no respect for the gospel invitation. Their heart does not jump. They have nothing. Why? Because we have not labored in the preaching of the gospel that they may see their need for Christ. These preachers today, all they do is say something like this. You've got a wonderful family, you've got a wonderful job, you've got a wonderful life. You just lack one little thing to complete it all. Jesus on the top so that you can have your best life now. What they ought to hear is, everything in your life is done. You have Christ or you have nothing. You see, in the economy of God, Christ is everything. It doesn't just say in Colossians that the worlds were created by Him. In the Greek it is the worlds were created in Him. All things were created in Him. Everything has been created within the sphere of God's Son. Anything outside of that sphere is absolutely asinine. It's absurd. It's ludicrous. It has no meaning. That's why one old pietist used to say, any conversation where Jesus Christ is not the theme, it's absolutely absurd. It's a waste. Christ is all, in all,